I've seen it happen way too often. You spot a huge, cheap-look TV on sale, you grab it, and a month later you're staring at a screen that looks more like a billboard than a home cinema. The disappointment kicks in when the picture looks washed out in the living room's light, the stand wobbles, or the smart platform feels clunky. That hesitation is exactly what made me pause before clicking on the Samsung 85-inch The Frame Pro. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. The first thing I thought about was how much space a TV that size actually needs in a real house. An 85-inch panel isn't just a piece of tech, it becomes a wall, a focal point, and in Samsung's case, a piece of decor. The frame line promises to double duty as art when you're not watching movies, but the promise can feel gimmicky if the execution drags down everyday use. So I dug into how the 2025 model actually behaves in a typical living room, what the One Connect hub does for cable management, and whether the premium price truly translates into a smarter buy. Let's start with the picture. Samsung advertises a museum-quality display with a matte, virtually glare-free screen. In practice, that matte coating is a game-changer for rooms that get a lot of daylight. I set the TV up next to a large window that lets in morning sun, and unlike glossy panels that bounce light and wash out colors, the Frame Pro kept its contrast solid. Black stayed deep enough that you could still see detail in a dark scene of a thriller, and the colors didn't look oversaturated, they felt natural, like you're looking at a high-end print rather than a TV. The 4K Neo QLED Mini LED backlight adds a subtle boost in brightness without the halo effect you sometimes see on older edge-lit LED TVs. Gaming performance is another real-world test that matters for many buyers. The Frame Pro supports variable refresh rate and can push 4K at 144 Hz. I hooked up a next-gen console and ran a fast-paced racing game. The frame stayed locked, there was no noticeable input lag, and the motion handling was buttery smooth. That level of performance usually lives in dedicated gaming monitors or high-end 65-inch TVs, so having it on an 85-inch screen is a pleasant surprise provided you have a room big enough to sit far enough back to enjoy that resolution without pixel picking. Now, the One Connect hub. Samsung's answer to the tangle of HDMI cables is a single, thin conduit that houses all the inputs and sits discreetly behind the TV. In my setup, the hub was mounted on the same wall, and the only visible cable was a sleek fiber optic link from the TV to the hub. That cleared the entire front of the TV, letting the bezels truly act as a frame rather than a mess of cables. It's worth noting, however, that the hub does add a small footprint on the wall and you need to plan where to place it before mounting the TV. If you're renting or can't drill extra holes, that could be a hurdle. Speaking of bezels, the Frame Pro's magnetic, interchangeable pieces are more than a novelty. The bundle includes a modern brown bezel that blends with wood tones, and you can swap it out for a different color in seconds. I tried a black bezel for movie nights, and the transition was literally a click away. The real benefit shows up when you decide to use the art store or display personal photos. The TV dims to a soft ambient lighting mode and shows your selected artwork without the typical TV glow. It's subtle enough that guests often think you've hung a real painting. Who should consider this TV? If you're a design-conscious homeowner who wants a massive screen without sacrificing the aesthetic of a gallery wall, this is a clear contender. Families that watch a lot of streaming content will appreciate the glare-free matte surface and the crisp 4K detail. Serious gamers will find the 144 Hz VRR support a welcome addition, especially if you already own a console that can output at that rate. The Frame Pro also makes sense for people who enjoy rotating their visual environment, art lovers, photographers, or anyone who likes to showcase family moments on a big screen. Who might skip it? First, anyone on a tight budget. The 85-inch size plus the One Connect hub and custom bezels push the price well beyond standard 85-inch TVs. Second, apartments or smaller living spaces where you can't sit far enough back to comfortably view a screen of that magnitude. The immersive experience can become a headache if you're forced to sit too close. Finally, if you don't care about the art mode or the cable-free look, you could find similar picture quality in a more conventional model that doesn't require the extra wall planning. Let's talk practical downsides. The biggest hidden trade-off is the One Connect hub's power consumption. Because it runs a separate power supply and houses multiple ports, it draws a few watts more than a TV with built-in inputs. In